to a new episode of More Than the Dress. My name is Michele Meyer-Shipp, and I'm the CEO of Dress for Success Worldwide. More Than the Dress is a podcast hosted by Dress for Success Worldwide, the leading global nonprofit supporting unemployed and underemployed women as they work to achieve economic independence. Our podcast focuses on leadership, empowerment, and stories of remarkable, great journeys of inspiration. We aim to go beyond the surface and dive into topics like strategies for career growth, well-being, navigating work-life challenges, overcoming that thing that we call the imposter syndrome, and translating experience and talents into a strong professional brand. I'd like to welcome you to today's episode of More Than the Dress, where the topic is understanding and claiming your superpower. We are thrilled to have Claudia Hernandez as today's special guest. Claudia is a career professional, mother, volunteer, and one of our esteemed Dress for Success global ambassadors. Our global ambassadors represent the heart of our mission, and each ambassador has a different yet inspiring story of resilience, courage, and strength. For today's episode, we're going to talk to Claudia about how our differences can be our superpower. So let's do it. Let's start our conversation with Claudia. Welcome, Claudia. So welcome, Claudia. So happy to have you on our podcast this episode. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm really honored and humbled.
Awesome. So let's jump in. We've got a lot to talk about today. And I want to start by really setting the stage for our listeners. So as I think about your journey, you have had an amazing journey, and your story is, for me, a story of resilience, and it's a story of inspiration. Having immigrated to the U.S. at a young age, navigated the foster care system, you have traveled the world, you speak several languages, you managed to navigate yourself a couple of scholarships to go through college. And now you have an amazing career working as a global program manager for a Fortune 500 company. And on top of all of that, you give back to many causes to support other human beings. So you've got a really rich life, and you're doing really great things in the community and in your career. Tell us how, as you embraced each of these unique experiences, each experience kind of helped set you up to navigate your journey.
Well, I really believe that navigating the transition from foster care to becoming a citizenship helped me learn a lot about this country and, what people have to go through in order to make that happen. I didn't know as a child when my parents came here that we were undocumented. I didn't know until my father went to jail that I was going to go to foster care. As a child, when you're taken from your roots and your family and your friends, all you want to do is go back. Mm-hmm. And that creates, resiliency, adaptability, a sense of self-awareness. And each phase of my journey has carried me with its own set of challenges, even now. And I have to embrace the fact that every experience can foster inner strength and perspective. Growing up in foster care taught me that my situation wasn't as bad as some other people. Mm-hmm. When you think you're in the worst situation and, nobody's going through what you're going through, and then you learn about somebody else going through something that's worse, you realize, oh, wow, I really need to be grateful, right? The other thing with foster care is we moved so much, and I was in this place and that place. I was in a home and different foster parents and different kids. You have to adapt to change because the only constant is change.
That's right.
And I believe adaptability can become a superpower. When I wanted to pursue higher education, it was because I didn't want to go through what my parents went through. We lived in a very, very, very poor environment. If I didn't go to school, I didn't eat. We had free lunch at school, thank God, but it was not a situation where I wanted to grow up in and be an adult and have my kids have to go through. And those uncertainties and all those problems that you go through help you find ways, creative ways to get out of it. Recognizing that this is a strength helps us move forward, and it gives us more confidence. Also, it deepens our understanding of diverse perspectives. What is somebody else going through? How are they dealing with it? How are they handling their crisis? I didn't know a lot of these things until I had to face them myself. And I think as human beings, sometimes we don't understand until it happens to us. This happened, with the Holocaust. Mm-hmm. They came for this person, and then they came for that person, and then they came for that person. And then when they come to you, that's when you really, truly understand it, because you're going through it. And so that's one of the reasons why I love to give back, is because everybody needs help. It doesn't matter who you are, and we all need help sometimes. But having gone through all of these experiences has helped me be more empathetic, right? Mm-hmm. To connect with other people from other walks of life, making it easier to build relationships and to collaborate and learn from one another. I didn't become a citizen until after I graduated from college, many decades after I came to the US. And becoming a citizen was one of the greatest opportunities I've ever been able to achieve. And I wish everybody had that opportunity, because I know we all know how many people are so desperate to leave their situation. I mean, when you have children crossing the border alone, mm-hmm. what kind of a situation do their parents have to be in to send their children to cross a border unaccompanied? I mean, that just breaks my heart, right? Because I want to know where my child is at all times and make sure that she's safe.
That's
and
right.
What kind of a situation do you have to be in to make that sacrifice?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Mm-hmm. This has helped me, have a mission to make a meaningful impact in our communities.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. And so just, I was scribbling some notes furiously as you said this, because I heard some really key themes that I think all of our listeners can take away from this. And it is that navigating uncertainty for you helped you build resilience, adaptability, self-awareness, and emotional intelligence. And I think that is the way you described it so authentically is just perfect. And I think, it's important for people to hear, because I think as people are navigating tough times, they wonder, like, why me, and why am I in this situation? Not appreciating necessarily in that moment that they are actually learning incredible life skills like the ones you just set forth. So thanks for that. And thank you for sharing a little bit about your story. We really appreciate that. It's interesting. So you actually answered a question I was going to ask you already about, challenges that you had to overcome. So I'm not going to have you do that again. Instead, what I'm thinking is, you talked about how you moved around a lot, and you had to move from place to place, different people, different environments, I'm sure different types of personalities. And as I think about the women we serve and, as they're trying to navigate a new career, their education, a new environment, a lot of times we hear that people are afraid. They feel like they have imposter syndrome. They feel like they don't fit in or they don't belong. How did you navigate acclimating in different environments as you moved around? And how easy was it for you to kind of gain that sense of belonging?
Well, I think it's hard for everybody, because we all have things that make us feel insecure about, ourselves. And sometimes we may not feel like we fit into a certain space, whether it's school or the workplace or social circles, you name it, right? And sometimes it's our background. Sometimes it's the color of our skin. Sometimes it's our language, religion, sexual orientation, anything that you feel worried about can make it hard to fit in. And there can be moments of doubt that, it seems like everybody else is having an easier time fitting in because, their parents helped them, or because they're rich, or because whatever, they haven't had the struggle that we are having, right? And this feeling of not belonging can be really isolating, especially when you have no one around who can relate to your specific challenges. And one of the reasons I share my story actually is because I've learned that I'm not the only one. And we all have something that we need to overcome. I mean, I've overcome so many things. I mean, poverty, violence, domestic violence, rape. And most of the time people don't want to talk about that. And it's because it's hard, right? But I also think that it's because there's a tremendous weight on expectations. And sometimes those expectations are internal and sometimes they're external, and they create doubt in ourselves. I mean, I often wondered if I deserved the opportunities that I fought so hard for, if my past would hold me back from any kind of future success. And pressure to succeed, especially when you're representing a marginalized community, a woman, an immigrant, a single mother. It's intense. It's overwhelming sometimes. And there were times when, I felt like I just want to give up, but I don't have a choice to fail, right? What's helped me in my journey is changing my mind shift. Instead of viewing adversity as something that hinders progress, looking at it as something that strengthens our resolve to change everything. Each obstacle becomes a lesson of resilience, finding the good and learning a lesson. For example, when I was living in foster care, I had an incredible amount of independence at a very, very young age. And looking back, I mean, my first job was when I asked somebody to give me a job, and they said, "Do you have a social security number?" And I had no idea what a social security number was. And so then I turned to cleaning apartments. I was 12 years old and I needed money because I wanted to get out of my situation. And the only way for me to do that was to be independent. The idea is that you begin to look at your challenges as opportunities to grow, and that fuels persistence. Now, of course, part of the process is to find a support system because we can't do it alone, right? And it's hard to ask for help, especially when we feel like we don't deserve it, and people make fun of me now because I say I don't collect things, and they say, "Oh, yes, you do. You collect people." Because I do. I collect people, and I still stay in touch with my friends from high school and college, and everywhere I go, I try to make new friends because we are not an island, and we're here to help each other. And, to know that we're not alone, we have to have each other's back.
That's right. That's right. I love everything you just said. And, it's funny, the wisdom that you're sharing is so powerful. I think, you managing your mindset, as you said, it's something I say all the time too, is everything. The self-doubt, the self-talk, the negative self-talk, it's real. And I think it's real for everybody. It's funny. I have another friend of mine who told me that when she was growing up, she's also from a marginalized group, and she often felt like she didn't belong. And she said every morning she used to look in the mirror and give herself positive affirmations. It was like her way of managing her mindset. And I love that you called that out, because a lot of times we don't even realize that it's the power of our own message to ourselves that may be holding us back. So I'm so glad you imparted that to our listeners. I also really, really love that you kind of put a fine pin in the point that challenges are opportunities to grow. I think that is really something that we have to lean into. And like you said, you gain a lot of superpowers from that. On support systems, tell us a little bit about how you have found your support systems. Who are your support systems? How do you keep that network of folks close that you can lean on?
Well, that's hard because it's hard for people to understand that you're helping them without an ulterior motive. And for me, I like to build deep relationships. And I really feel like sometimes in this world that we live in, where everything is fast and furious, it's difficult to build those deep relationships. I have found that in volunteering, I really have met some of my best friends because they have like-minded ideas and values. And that's how I build my tribe, right? Who are the people that share my values? You don't necessarily have to have the same opinion. I actually would rather you didn't have the same opinion, because I feel like we have to challenge our own beliefs, right? Whether they're coming from childhood or society or the media or whatever. But I really like to get to know people. And find ways to connect with them. And when people ask me, what am I say, I'm human. What are you? Because I want them to strip everything and start at the bottom. I want people to understand that we are not competing against each other. We are running our own race, right? This marathon is yours and nobody else's. And so stop comparing yourself to somebody else, because only you can outrun yourself. And so when I look for people to be part of my tribe, I look for people that, have that mindset that, they're not negative. They have a positive outcome, that they're wanting to grow, that they're making themselves a better person. And I'm not talking about, I want superstars, right? Although in my mind, they are superstars. I'm looking for people that want to be better, that want to help, that understand that we are one. I don't care what everybody says, but we are one. We're one human race. And if you watch those alien movies, that is the only time when humans aren't fighting with each other, right?
That's so
and
true.
so I really think, if you find somebody that has something in common with you, make a friend.
Yeah.
Because you never know when that person's going to need you or you're going to need them, right? And you're not doing it because you're going to need each other, but you really need to find someone that you can lean on. Even if it's just to say, you know what, I had a really bad day today. I need a hug. Right.
Yep.
And I try to be the person that I want my friends to be. Right. I'm there for them. I call them on their birthday. I ask them how they're doing. You want to be the kind of person that you want them to be. It starts with us.
That's right. That's beautiful. I love that. My sons laugh at me because I'm kind of the mindset that I've never met a stranger. And one of the things that I always tell them, they're all three of them are in their early 20s. And I've said to them for so long, I'm like, you got to talk to people because you never know what someone's going through, and you never can really appreciate how much you may have in common with someone that you don't even recognize, right? And when you start that conversation, you realize, oh, wow, we've had some of the same challenges. Oh, wow, we went to the same school, or we grew up in the same community, or whatever the thing is. And you build great relationships like that. So I totally agree with you. I think that's awesome. Talk about this for a little bit. Let's talk about, hey, you're on a Dress for Success podcast, right? So let's talk about how the Dress for Success community has been helpful for you. And, if you've been engaged in any of the professional women's groups or anything like that, how has that helped you out?
So it's a funny story. When I was referred to Dress for Success, I was going through a really, really hard time in my life. I was a sales professional at a technology company, and I was a top performer, and my life was going great. And I became pregnant. And when I had my daughter, her father was abusive. And so I left that relationship, and he didn't help me with my daughter at the time. And so I had to leave work a lot because, this is pre-COVID, but all daycares, if your child has a fever or, any kind of little thing, they want you to pick them up right away. Otherwise they get kicked out. And so I would have to leave work and go home, work from home, and I'd work from home. And these were the days before work from home was kind of a standard. And after so many incidences, I got fired. And it was something that was really shocking and unexpected because I thought, well, I'm a top performer. There's no way they're going to fire me. And they did. And so I just didn't know what to do. And, as oftentimes it happens, when it rains, it pours. I lost my job. My daughter's father racked up thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of credit card debt. And I filed for bankruptcy, and I had no job, and I had no friends or family to help me because they all work. And, I didn't know what to do. And so one day I was, sitting in my house, and I texted my daughter's father and I said, hey, are you going to go see her at the daycare? Because he was not allowed to come to my house. He said, yes, I'm on my way. And so this was a day in Arizona where there was a haboob and I couldn't see, 5 feet from my face. And so I wrapped her up and I went to the daycare and I took her there. And He didn't go see her.
Wow.
But again, opportunities, right? There was a Goodwill in that shopping center. And I walked in because I didn't want to be on the road with the hoo going on. And I walked in there just waiting for him to, do his thing. And they said, "Are you here for the interviews?" And I said, "What interviews? I thought this was a store." And they said, "Oh, no, we have a career center." And I said, "At a Goodwill?" And they said, "Yeah." And so I was kind of like, am I dreaming? Am I walking into the Twilight Zone? What's going on here? And so they told me that they were doing interviews. And I said, "For what company?" And they told me the company. And that was the number one company that I had made. My coach had told me to make a list of the 5 companies I wanted to work for. And so I said, "Well, I'm not dressed for it." And they said, "That's okay. You're fine." And I said, "Well, I don't have a resume." And they said, "We have computers." And so every objection I gave them, they countered with something. And so I went and I had the interview, and it was really creepy. It was in the basement. It was very dark. It was very dungy. And I really thought, oh my gosh, I must be dreaming or something. And the interview went great. And they said, "We want to do a second interview," as I always do. I said, "Do you have any feedback for me?" And they said, "Yes, you should dress more professionally." And so I thought, oh my gosh, I didn't have the heart to tell her that, hey, I was just dropping off my daughter at the daycare center next door. And so Goodwill referred me to Dress for Success. And I really didn't have the money at the time because I had so many medical bills and, all kinds of bills. And it was a really bad time for me. And so I thought, okay, well, with my head down, I said I need to ask for help. And so I called and I made an appointment, and Pat, and Pat is amazing. And so I walked in and she had a bright smile on her face and she welcomed me, and I got a suit for the interview. And as I was leaving, she said, "Good luck. And if you get the job, come back and we'll give you a week's worth of clothes."
Wow.
And I thought, this is amazing. Like, how does this even happen? And so obviously, the rest of the story, I got the job. I've had 3 different positions. I've grown with the company and I love it. And, it took me a little while to go back, but they invited me to go to the professional women's group. And once I was in the professional women's group, they invited me to be a CAP delegate, which is a community action project delegate. And so during COVID, we helped plant 100 trees in the south side of Phoenix because, as you know, in impoverished areas, they have a lack of green spaces. And so that was my CAP project. And then I was invited to be an ambassador for Dress for Success worldwide. And my daughter got to go to New York for the first time, and she wanted to see the Statue of Liberty, which was amazing. And I got to meet women from all over the world. I have new friends, which was fun. And the women that I have met at Dress for Success always teach me something. I know my story, and, to me, it doesn't feel inspiring, but I'm always inspired to hear everybody else's story, right? And I feel like we're unique human beings, and the way that we respond to things is different. And, there's a lot of single moms. There's some women that have been in jail. There's women that have fought, domestic abuse. And there's just a lot of different things that, we've all had to overcome. And even though it's not my, I don't know what the word is, my challenge, I still, I feel proud and I feel happy that they've overcome all these things and we're all doing it together. It's almost like when you're in a weight loss challenge and you have 10 friends with you and you're all going towards the same goal, right?
Right.
That's what I feel like, that we're all working towards making a better self.
That's awesome. I love that. And by the way, just for the record, even though your own story doesn't feel inspirational to you, it is very inspirational to us. So do know that. And I agree with you. I mean, every single woman that I've come across and many of the women who were here with us last year with you, I mean, just amazing, incredible women who have overcome incredible obstacles. So you're all quite an inspiration. So thank you for being that without even knowing it. You talked a bit about being a mom. And, as I think about, kind of this latest part of your journey, working, building your career, raising, a family, how have you navigated the work-life piece? I mean, that's one that, as a mom myself, I know that there's no playbook for that. And there's no roadmap. It's not always easy. It's not always perfect. Tell us about how you've done the quote balancing act, if there is such a thing.
Well, I think being a mother, it's a 24-hour day job. It's just, you're always on. And as a single mother, I feel like even then it's even a little bit harder, right? Because you need more help. It's definitely challenging when it comes to managing my career, because there have been instances where, for example, I won't go for a job because it requires too much travel away from her. And I make that choice not to do that, right? I think when people understand that there are things outside of our control, but the way that we respond is always our choice, right? I choose not to take that job because I choose to stay with my daughter more. And so, if I want to be close to her and I want to do things with her, it's really up to me. I was recently invited to be a part of the Dress for Success Phoenix, the Reset Leadership Program. And it's on one of the nights that I have my daughter and she goes to a swim team. And I really debated not taking that opportunity. And after thinking about it, I decided I need to show my daughter that it is important for me to take care of myself and do things that are important to me. And so I hired a sitter to take her to swim, because really all I do is sit there and watch her. And I rearranged my schedule and I made time for the class and made time for doing the assignments. And I had a talk with her and I let her know what was going to happen. And she was funny. She says, "Mommy, you're already a leader. You don't need a class for that." To which I responded, "Remember, honey, that practice makes perfect. And if I want to be a better leader, I need to keep practicing." And she understands why I'm doing it. And she knows that I'll be there on other days for swim team. And the way that I think it's important to balance work and life is to be present. When you're with work, focus on that. And when you're with your, children or with your spouse or any other relationship, when you give your all, one of the things that we're talking about in this reset class is that you bring energy to the table wherever you go. And what kind of energy that is important, right? Because are you going to work? Oh my gosh, I have to go to work. No, I get to go to work. I get to do, the things that I love to do and that I'm good at. And when you're with your children, do they feel that you love them, right? Everybody always talks about people hear your words, but they don't remember it, but they remember, how you made them feel.
Yes.
And for my child, growing up, my parents, we were abused. We weren't allowed to speak. I mean, the last time my father hit me, he hit me so bad that I couldn't sit, stand, kneel, or breathe without hurting. I didn't go to school for a month. And I didn't want children growing up because I didn't want to be like my parents. But the one thing that I do know when I found out that I was going to have a child is I promised myself that that child would be loved. And she knows it and she feels it. And really, that's all that matters. You don't have to give them 24 hours a day.
That's
right. But if you give them, a good whatever time you have, but make sure that it counts.
Yes.
That to me is really what matters.
I love that. And mom to mom, I think that what you said is totally spot on. It's funny. I remember navigating a little mom guilt when my sons were younger. And as they got older, I kind of got over it and took the mantra of, hey, they'll figure it out. I'll get a babysitter, whatever the thing may be. And now that I look at them, all three of them are in their 20s. And they say things to me like, Mom, you're an amazing leader. Mom, I love the way, you navigate your day to day. We love the way we watch you do the things you do. And you're a role model for us. Like, these are things they don't necessarily tell us as we're living through it. But when they come on the other side of it as young adults and they start to tell you that they saw these things, it's like, wow, it worked. You know, and I think about all the time that you probably, like me, spent going, I don't know, is this going to backfire on me or whatever? We really are teaching them. I think we're teaching our daughters how to be independent and how to, you know, go for what they want. And we're teaching our sons to appreciate and respect and recognize, you know, every person in their lives for what they bring and what they want to achieve. So good work there. I mean, I'm really proud of you, and I'm hoping that everything continues to go well with the family. But it is good stuff, and there is no playbook, so we just have to figure it out, right?
Exactly.
So let me ask you this: in the midst of all these things, right? So you've got the job, you're managing your daughter, and spending time with her and being present, which is, I love that you said, you know, being present, because that really is important. You also do a fair amount of volunteerism. And you talked a little bit before about, you know, why that is. And I love that you give back and you support others in the community. How do you find time kind of to fit that in with, you know, the day-to-day of the rest of life? And how does that work for you?
Well, that's easy. Most of the time that I volunteer is when I don't have my daughter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
However, I do want her to have that volunteering seed in her. And so when she is with me, depending on what it is, for example, in October, we're going to be doing a breast cancer walk, and we're raising money for that. Earlier this year, we lost somebody at the company that had been there for 33 years. And she was an amazing person, and we're going to honor her by doing that. And I want her to be a part of it because I want her to understand the importance of giving back. You know, it's easy to understand the pain and the difficulty when you've experienced it, but you also have to look at what others are experiencing, and not necessarily, you'll never understand it fully, but we have to understand that what they're going through is just as important as what we're going through, you know. And when I was in Mexico, my grandmother raised me because my mother abandoned me. And my grandmother always gave back to the community. And, you know, people would come to our house and knock on the door and they would ask for food. And my grandmother never turned anybody away. I mean, we could have like barely nothing left and she would still give it away. And she owned a restaurant and people loved the restaurant, and, you know, she would charge the people at the restaurant, but she didn't charge the people that came to ask for food. And I couldn't understand why. And one day I asked her, you know, and she said, you know, those people are homeless because we took their homes. These were indigenous people that were coming from, you know, the mountain. And so she said, the least we can do is share some food with them because no one deserves to go hungry. And it is our duty to help one another. And my grandmother was raised by nuns, and she was a very religious woman. And my father basically one day came and took us, and we never went back. And so she started, I'm just going to make me cry. She started an orphanage in hopes that someone would be helping my brother and I wherever we were.
Amazing. And
I didn't know this until after I graduated from college. I went back because I didn't have my citizenship, and so I couldn't travel. And, you know, she always told me that in order to help ourselves, first we have to help each other. And that has always stayed with me.
Wow.
And so for me, I always look outside of myself. I didn't know until I went to foster care that there were other children who were worse off than I was. You know, I didn't know until, you know, I thought foster care was the worst thing that had happened to me. And then I realized it was a blessing in disguise because that's how I was able to gain citizenship.
Yep.
You know, it's just the realization that if you're in a position to help, it doesn't matter if it's big or small, you know, just do it.
That's right. That's right.
Because it's another human being.
Wow. Well, I see where you get it from. I mean, clearly your grandmother was a woman of great character and grace and gratitude and giving. And I see all of that exemplified in you, Claudia. Thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate you for sharing. You know, it's it's funny, we had a whole list of questions to ask you. And in this conversation, you actually answered all the questions. So as we think about wrapping up the conversation, I want to just, one of the questions I was supposed to ask you is if you could share some advice on turning adversity into strength. And you actually said a few things that I think answer that. So if you would just indulge me for a minute, I want to just kind of summarize a few of the tips you gave and then ask if you want to add anything to that. Does that work?
Sure.
All right, cool. So you talked about, one, which I think is critically important, managing your mindset and really, thinking about how you frame your thoughts. That's really important. You talked about looking at challenges as opportunities to grow. You talked about the importance of a support system, finding your tribe of people, right, that you could lean into and have to support each other. I love that you talked about being human and the fact that at the core, despite any outside, inside differences, we are all human. And you talked about not comparing yourself or your situation to others because everybody's situation is different. And then I also found it really, really, really important that you said that while we can't necessarily control the situations we're in, we can control how we respond. And then finally, you talked about being present and enjoying each and every moment and then giving back. I mean, I think these are all incredible words of wisdom. Is there anything else that you think it's important to leave our listeners with on things they might consider as they think about turning adversity into strength?
Wow, I talked a lot.
You did amazing.
First, I think one of the things that I've struggled with is owning my own story. And so I would say that I would advise people to reflect on their past without judgment, right? It's not your fault. It's not anybody else's fault. It is what it is. Just reflect on it and understand, where you're coming from and know that the adversity is part of life and it has shaped you in very unique ways, and own your own story and give yourself permission to grow from it, right? What happened and it cannot be changed, but what you can do today and tomorrow can. So focus on that. The other thing I would say is cultivate habits that build resilience, like, practice mindfulness, definitely work on your support system and focus on small achievable goals, because sometimes we look at a huge goal and it seems impossible, but when you break it down, anything is possible. Resilience grows each time you overcome a challenge, no matter how small, and just don't give up. Don't give up on yourself. Just please don't give up.
Excellent. I love it. I love it. Claudia, you are an incredible woman with many superpowers. And I want to thank you for sharing your wisdom, for sharing your story, for your just being so genuine and authentic. You really do role model, what being human looks like. And I appreciate you. So thank you so much for the time. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you, Michelle. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the work that you do helping women like me and our community and our world. So thank you.
Absolutely. We here for each other, right? We're going to support each other.
Yes.
That support system you mentioned. I'm sending you a big virtual hug.
Thank you. Right back at you.
All the best, my dear. Take care. Thank you so much for joining us today for another impactful episode of More Than the Dress. I'm glad to have introduced you to our Dress for Success Global Ambassador, Claudia Hernandez, and I look forward to introducing you to more of our amazing women in the future. Please visit us at dressforsuccess.org to learn more about our organization and follow us on social media at Dress for Success for the latest updates. This is Michele Meyer-Shipp, and I'm signing off till next time. See you soon. Take good care.